Hello guys, we are back with our series Nimble versus Battleforge versus Brigands. And Brigands are probably the first opponents that you fight, and they are overall probably the weakest faction. That is safe to say, I would say. And note, they are the first opponents that you fight, so you are likely to fight them way before you have Battleforge or Nimble. Yeah, I think we can skip the thugs. They are the weakest. They have a bunch of garbage weapons and they have no hit points. Die very easily. Let's go right away to the Brigand Raiders. Brigand Raiders. So they have Executioner. That means if you get injured by something like a Brigand Marksman crossbow, they do 20% additional damage against you, which is nasty. Nasty. Especially early game, you get easily injured by crossbows. They can have two-handed mallets and axes, pikes and hooked blades. They have decent weapons, and the biggest problem, or the biggest threat from them, is the javelins. 25% chance of a bundle of javelins or throwing axes. So they have decent defense and decent skills. They have shields, which makes them OP. So they have, with the two-handed weapons, they have high single target damage. With the one-handed weapons, they have a lot of volume of low damage attacks. And with the throwing weapons that they usually have in the bigger Brigands camps, they have high volume of ranged attacks, which disfavors Nimble right away. Poachers are just the marksmen. Let's go right away to the marksmen. They have crossbows and they have bows. Short bow, lower, normal. Yeah, it doesn't say. The wiki got changed recently. It's not as perfect anymore. Okay, so as you can see, the Brigands marksmen with the crossbows are really, really nasty because they have bullseye and they have crossbow mastery. That means they do high armor damage, high armor ignore damage, so they do a lot of hit point damage to you. Nimble is pretty good specifically versus crossbows, but Nimble is really bad versus the bows. So in combination with the Brigand Raiders that a lot of the time have throwing weapons, the marksmen and the raiders in general have a high volume of ranged fire, which is really bad if you are Nimble. Also, they are relatively fast. So if you have Nimble, you're not necessarily outspeed them, sadly. Okay, let's go to the Brigand Leader. The Brigand Leaders are kind of they are the leaders. They have a chance of very, very good equipment. I think they have a base chance of like 1% of being a champion or something. With the Bounty Hunter, it goes to 4%. Really nice to have them as champions because they can have all the cool weapons and armors that you can have. And these guys, they can have big two-handed scary weapons. They can have the tier 3 one-handed weapons. They do not have duelists, but they have executioner and they do plus 20% armor damage, interestingly enough. High defense, high hit points, 9 lives. Relatively hard to kill, especially if they have shields. And of course, these can have 35% chance of having throwing weapons. Yeah, this is the leader, basically. Swordmaster, they have duelist, really dangerous opponents. They have all the perks. Swordmaster champions are probably the strongest single entity in the game, can deal with basically anything. Has like ridiculous amount of defense. So even your God Bros will probably roll on like 10% hit chance or something. Yeah, has battle flow, I think has also other damage perks that makes them really, really dangerous. Lowers fatigue by minus 15%. Yeah, just nasty to deal with. Like they will hit you. They have 100 melee skill. Yeah, Swordmasters are dangerous to deal with. Easiest way to deal with them is net them down and throwing stuff at them. Or with bows. yeah, Hedge Knights. I call them Trash Knights because they are. The thing is, these guys have Battleforge. They have a lot of good perks as well. But they have lower melee skill and they have lower defense. Therefore, they have more armor. So if you have a good team, you can just surround them and step them down with knives to get their armor. Best source of having full forge armor. These guys a lot of the time have full forge armor with nice two-handed weapons. These are the best source of getting good battle forge gear and two-handed weapons like those. Can become a champion, 2% chance. Okay, interesting. Yeah, well, with the bounty hunter, this should significantly increase. And as you can see, they have all of the nice weapons, and these guys as champions would mean they can have the whole equipment that you can have, so they basically can have any famed weapon or almost any famed weapon in the game, right? Specifically, like any human faction weapon. Yeah, all the big weapons that you would like to use. They have. The thing is, if they have stuff like, if they have a Great Axe or a Bardiche, Nimble is bad versus them. If they have the other weapons, Battleforge is kind of bad versus them. Yeah, so like surrounding them, yeah, they do additional damage and everything else. Just surrounding them, staggering them, step them down with knives or throw nets on him is the way to deal with these guys. Master Archers are, of course, Master Archers, most of the time they have a warbow instead of a heavy crossbow. Heavy crossbow is, of course, better versus Battleforge, but if you have full forge, right, the crossbows have, I think, only 70% armor efficiency, so if you have full forge with 4 padding, you will probably not get injured on the first hit. It can be unlikely, although they have crippling strikes, but the crossbow doesn't do well versus high armor if you have a lot of armor in combination with Battleforge and 4 padding and steel row. If you don't have these perks, there can be a decent amount of damage that still goes through your armor. Because again, they have 70% armor ignore, but the damage that goes through your hit points is reduced by the current armor that you have, and if you have like full forge, and the crossbow does maybe like 50 damage against your whole armor, like you take a couple hit points, that shouldn't be an issue, right? Which is much more dangerous is the warbow, especially versus Nimble Bros. Like the warbow does, because of the double attack and the high base damage, it's really scary versus Nimble because it can shred your armor very fast and then all the damage goes straight to hit points. So even with the 60% damage reduction to hit points, if you're Nimble, if you get hit by a couple of arrows from a Swordmaster, and you have to imagine these guys from a Master Archer, they are never alone. So there are Brigand Marksmen around, there are Brigand Raiders around who throw javelins at you, and then there is like a crossbow bolt and more arrows coming at you. So really, really nasty. These guys tend to shred Nimble, and Battleforge usually can shrug off arrows and even crossbow bolts, at least if you have good armor attachments and stuff. Yeah, this guy Bandit, this is from a very rare event. They seem to be a little bit better Brigand Raiders, and of course they have dogs, which are whatever. We can ignore dogs. So overall, the Brigand faction, I would classify them as a glass cannon, because a lot of the time they have very bad headgear, especially the marksmen and the thugs. Their body armor isn't as good as well compared to other human factions. So they have relatively low armor, but the fact that most of them have throwing weapons, or like, I shouldn't say that, but like a lot of the time, if you run into like a brigand camp, and like they go relatively early, they go up to like 17 brigands, right? They have multiple marksmen. Most of the time they have like 5 marksmen. So there's a high volume of arrows and crossbow bolts coming at you. But there's also throwing weapons from the brigands, raiders, and from the brigand leader that are coming at you. So there is like, also like most brigand raiders in melee, they have a low damage but high volume attacks. Most of the time they have one-handed weapons. So like it's a low volume a high volume of low damage attacks. So if you have Battleforge, you can kind of ignore the damage output from the ranged to a big degree, right? And the only thing you have to be a little bit more careful about are stuff like Hedge Knights and Sword Masters. In both cases, I would say if the Sword Master hits you, I would say the Sword Master is much better versus Nimble because of the high base damage of the sword. The sword cuts through Nimble like butter, but they also cut through Forge relatively quickly if they're not a champion, right? The thing is, like, Forge, you have so much armor, even with Duelist, a lot of the time you can tank multiple hits before it gets really dangerous. With Nimble, especially with the crippling strikes, it hurts, man. Like, it's really bad. So I'm actually not 100% sure which one is better. I would say Battleforge is probably better, but like Swordmaster's really dangerous. So probably doesn't matter too much. Same with the Hedge Knight. If these guys hit you, it will hurt. Doesn't matter if you're Battleforged or if you're Nimble. So don't get hit by them. Try to control them with nets. Step them down, surround them, stun them. Especially Swordmaster, net them down to lower their initiative and their dodge values, and then start shooting them with throwing weapons or bows. That is a good way to deal with them, because their melee defense is most of the time 100 plus. Their range defense is much lower. So like even your best bros in melee have probably a 10% hit chance versus them, but your range bros will probably have a 50% hit chance versus them. So you beat them with range, and this guy is very susceptible to moral checks. So if you surround them with 6 bros and start stabbing him with the knives, the daggers, this guy will most likely run away. Overall, I've seen Brigands, and I think that's actually on stream that we did. I've seen Brigands win versus Barbarians, if the terrain is right, because they have so much ranged output, crossbows, throwing weapons, and bows. Like, it's a volume of fire that hurts even tougher opponents. And I think we all had that experience that brothers get just shot to bits by crossbows who just instantly injure you, and then all the other brigands, the raiders, they have executioner, so they deal additional damage to you, but they are easy to kill, right? They have relatively low defense, and the thing is, they have bad armor. A lot of the times the head is unprotected, so you can kill them fast with headshots. Yeah, in general, I would say Nimble struggles versus like large late game Brigands camps just because of the sheer volume of ranged fire and melee attacks that are coming at you. So like there's always a decent chance that a Nimble brother just eats like 20 ranged attacks and dies, and like a Battleforge guy, if he gets shot by 20 arrows, doesn't care, right? If he gets hit by 20 sword attacks, doesn't care. But the late game Brigand camps, they can even threaten Battleforge. But overall, I would say Battleforge is superior versus Brigands, and in almost any aspect, Battleforge tends to be better because of the high volume of attacks that by themselves do low damage. And Nimble usually gets shredded by high volume of low damage attacks. But of course, early game, most of the time you fight them before you have either Nimble or Battleforge. So if you can't afford Battleforge at the time and you just have Nimble, at least you have something, right? But be very mindful. Just be very mindful that your Nimble brother, if he gets focused down and he eats like 10 javelins, he's gonna die. Or 10 arrow shots and like a couple sword attacks. Like, they have enough volume to kill Nimble bros. Don't feel invulnerable just because you have Nimble. Be mindful with your positioning. Be ready to rescue your brother. Also, what has proven kind of good against them is if you put a Nimble bro who has a shield and you put them right in front of the camp, so all of the marksmen, or most of the marksmen, the Brigand Raiders, will tend to shoot this one guy. You can give him a kite shield for additional range defense as well, and then you have kind of like an arrow baiter right in front. Because the AI tends to target the center of your formation, but it also likes to shoot at closer targets that have low hit points, low armor, and are nimble. they tend to not shoot that much at Battleforge. So even if this guy has a range shield and has like dodge and like is a tank and has like, I don't know, 60, 70 range defense or something like that, even then the AI will tend to target the low armor nimble dodge tank. So if you have like a nimble dodge tank with a kite shield, can really help approaching these big camps with a lot of ranged attacks. Yeah, and try to have as many Battleforge as you can. Alright guys, this is it. If you are a newer player, I hope you learned a little bit about the game. If not, I hope you find it at least a little bit entertaining. If you did so, please like, comment and subscribe. I will see you there and in the next video. Have a nice day. Bye bye.